everyone. Hi. Finally, through couple weeks, after couple weeks, we got on the podcast with Steve McAllister from company called the Parley, correct, Steve?
Yeah, the parlay, Carol, but close enough.
The Parley. Okay, I'm sorry. So Steve, could you introduce yourself a little?
Sure, I won't go too long, Carol, but I'm someone who's spent better part of 43 years working in sports media with sports organizations. And then 4 years ago, when sports betting became single event sports betting became legal in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
I was one of six partners to start a company called the Parlay. We create the commercial part of our business. We create video content for legal sports books, and then I started covering the legal gambling industry 4 years ago with initially a newsletter called the Parlay, and then we rebranded ourselves to Gaming News Canada. So I host a podcast now. We do two podcasts a week where I interview people who work in the gambling industry, and then we also have a fellow, Dave Briggs, who writes a newsletter twice a week on that covers the industry. I've been very lucky, Carol. I've been I've had a chance to manage sports departments at the Globe and Mail and Yahoo in Canada. I worked for the NHL Players Association for 3 years back in the 1990s as their media relations person. Spent some time with the National Tennis Federation here, and also had an opportunity to do some consulting for the Canadian Minister of Sport 5 years ago. So yeah, I've had a really good run in the sports and sports media industries.
Whoa, actually, what triggered my attention is that you mentioned you did some consultancy for the Ministry of Sports in Canada, for Minister.
Yes, yeah,
Tell
that
us
was
about it. It's really exciting.
yeah. So I had in 2018, Carol, I had a company with a partner of mine called Hip Check Media, which I know you'll appreciate as a hockey fan. And we
Mm-hmm.
were, our business was helping sports organizations create social media strategies and using short form video to help promote their athletes and their programs. In Canada,
Mm-hmm.
there just just isn't a lot of funding available for sports organizations, so we were having a hard time making a business out of it. And I was approached by the Minister of Sport, Kirsty Duncan. She was about to create a committee to look at concussions in children's sports. And Kirsty was not only the Minister of Sport, but she was Minister of Science. And her office didn't
Mm-hmm.
really have anybody with background or expertise in sports and communications in sports. So they brought me on board on a contract, and I was with them for about 6 or 7 months, but really enjoyed working for the minister, who's been a leader in trying to change the sports system in Canada, and also give me appreciation for how hard the people behind the scenes and the Canadians' political system, how hard they work.
Okay, yeah, it's kind of out of the podcast team, but it's really interesting. And what was the main duties you had working with the minister? What were you trying to achieve?
Yeah, so I would provide her and her office a summary of they were having these hearings where they would bring in experts or people who had stories to tell around concussions. So Gary Bettman and Bill Daly from the National Hockey League, they were invited to appear in front of this committee because, as you know, as a hockey observer, that there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
conversation around concussions with hockey players, and we're reading the stories and seeing the studies around CTE now. And but the main focus of
Mm-hmm.
the committee was trying to make sports safer for young athletes. Things like having proper protocols in place so that when a young athlete did suffer a concussion, that there was a program before they could return to the field of play, and that there were more rigid guidelines put in place so that athletes wouldn't be rushed
Mm-hmm.
back into competition. So I provided a lot of expertise around reporters that the minister should be talking to, and making sure that the media was aware of this committee and the hearings that were taking place. And then there were also a couple of issues. But when I joined the minister's office, there was an attempt by Calgary to submit a bid to bring the Winter Olympics back to Canada and back to Calgary. So I provided some communications consulting around that issue as well.
That is actually really interesting, and I think you influenced your influence was huge while you were on this position, influence on the country, and that's really awesome. But going back to the podcast team and to the betting, to gaming, and to your company, so could you tell us as a hockey fan how big hockey in terms of the betting in Canada right now?
Yeah, it's interesting, Carol. I mean, there's still hockey's obviously very, very big, and the one thing I've learned, I didn't I didn't know much about sports betting when I started covering the industry in February 2021. But you learn from talking to people that people really love, no different than people buying merchandise of their favorite teams or getting autographs of their favorite players on their favorite team. But sports bettors tend to bet local, casual sports fans. So if you're a Toronto Maple Leaf fan, you're going to bet on the Leafs. You're going to bet on Leafs games, or if you're an Edmonton Oilers fan, and you're going to bet on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and whether or not the Oilers are going to win. But what we've also seen is that the other major professional sports like the NBA is very popular with bettors in Canada. No surprise, the NFL is very popular with bettors, and we knew that because we know how many people play in office pools when the NFL season is going on, and fantasy sports is big in Canada as well. The NHL in terms of betting volume it's not number one in Canada, but it's again, it's no surprise that it is very, very popular with people who are betting legally in Ontario and across the rest of the country.
Okay, that's interesting because I saw the NHL is number one in Canada for sure. But from what you're saying, what sport is actually the biggest one then?
For the most part, Carol, there might be some discrepancies with some sports books, but for the most part, the NBA is the most popular sport, and the NFL is right there. And then the other surprise for me has been that Major League Baseball is very popular. You read there's a lot of coverage today where Major League Baseball isn't as popular as it once was. And I think that's true in Canada. I mean, the Blue Jays haven't won the World Series since 1993. So, but baseball is still very popular, and I think it speaks to the in-play betting that's becoming more and more popular with bettors being, and then you betting on a Shohei Ohtani or Juan Soto or the superstars of the game, so that again, there is Major League Baseball is popular. And even I think with the Canadian Football League in Western Canada, the CFL is very popular. So I think if you looked at the provincial lottery and gaming corporations, which controls legal sports betting in those Western provinces right now, the CFL would be popular as well.
Okay, yeah, I got you. So in terms of like we see a lot of regular. I'm sorry, how to say it correctly. We see legal problems in the United States in terms of betting, and how do you see the legal future for Canada in betting?
Yeah, you know what, Carol, it's been a really interesting year in both the U.S. and Canada. I think sports betting is legal in about 37 states now, 38 states in the United States. In Canada, Ontario is the only province that has an open market. So there's 51 different operators in Ontario, along with the Lottery and Gaming Corporation, which is called OLG, the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. And then across the rest of Canada, the only legal betting is by the provinces. They control legal sports betting right now. What's happened is that there are people who are upset. They think there's too much advertising. There's too much advertising of sports betting companies and online gaming companies on television. There are a lot of concerns around gambling addiction and problem gambling right now. And to the point where right now gambling is regulated by the individual states and provinces in Canada and the U.S. Not by the federal governments are now starting to intervene because there's been such a backlash to the advertising and
Mm-hmm.
the perception, and there are studies that show that problem gambling rates are rising, and so I think that's a story that's gonna be a key storyline in 2025 is how involved do the federal governments in both countries get in terms of regulating the legal gambling industry. And the other thing which I need to mention too, Carol, is that there's still there's a lot of still a lot of illegal gambling operators out there, and people bet with illegal operators. And I had on the chief executive officer of a company called Rivalry a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me about cryptocurrency and that there are a lot of these illegal operators are dealing in crypto now. And crypto in Canada is one of the most
Mm-hmm.
active countries in terms of people betting and paying with crypto.
Okay, yeah. So I got you in terms of the 2025. We'll see how it goes for Canada, but like in general, let's say in 5 to 10 years, do you see the betting is actually like getting really big in Canada?
Yeah, I think it's, we certainly, if you look at the numbers in Ontario, the numbers increase every year
Mm-hmm.
in terms of betting. I think it will level off a little bit at some point. One of the big storylines in Canada is what other provinces are going to follow Ontario. Alberta
Mm-hmm.
has indicated that it's going to open a competitive gambling marketplace, legal gambling marketplace. If you talk to most people, they'll say that will be launched in 2025. I had one person tell me a couple of weeks ago that they're a bit skeptical, that they're not convinced that's going to happen next year. And then British Columbia and Quebec are the two other big provinces that have
Mm-hmm.
uh, both their provincial lottery and gaming corporations have very successful businesses right now, but nobody has any kind of a timeline or a real good feeling on when legal gambling would be expanded in those two provinces.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
the
Okay, yeah.
companies, yeah, like the FanDuels and the DraftKings and the Caesars and the BetMGMs, they would like to see legal gambling expand to as many provinces as possible in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so everyone is waiting, right? But I'm curious, like, how many like sport books do you see in Canada? Do you see only big players, or do you see there will be a room like for small sport books, local ones?
Yeah, there's certainly a cross section, Carol. If you look at Ontario right now, I mean, you have
Mm-hmm.
most all the big players, and then you have some smaller companies like North Star Gaming, which is partly owned by the owners of the Toronto Star. That company started when sports betting became legal in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
There's a company that has really focused on online casino for women called Betty Gaming. There's a
Mm-hmm.
company. One of the Parlay's clients is a company called European gaming company called Roots, ROOTZ, and they started out in
Mm-hmm.
Ontario. They started out in Ontario pushing online casino, but they have a sports book, and the Parlay is producing a weekly sports betting show for them now. So there are the big fish and the small fish, and the one thing that's really interesting, and I was asked to participate in a year-end roundtable with some other betting
Mm-hmm.
journalists. And when Ontario launched this legal market almost 3 years ago, everybody talked about consolidation, and there was it was going to be in year one or year two where these small fish would start getting swallowed up by the big fish, and that hasn't happened
Mm-hmm.
yet, and people are surprised that there are still 51 operators in Ontario, and that number actually grew this year. So everybody, this consolidation that was supposed to happen hasn't happened yet, and we'll see if that changes in 2025.
Okay, so there is definitely a room for a small fish, like you said. And you mentioned that in Ontario you have 51 sport books, or how many?
Yeah, so it wouldn't be, they're not all sports books, Kirill. Some of those companies will specialize in online casino. And that's
Mm-hmm.
and just for your listeners, that's what's unique about Ontario is that when the provincial government decided to have open up the marketplace, they allowed both legal sports betting and legal online casino. In the U.S., there are only 7 states that have legal online casino, and it's been
Mm-hmm.
the big operators. They've been lobbying these states that already have legal sports betting to add legal online casino, and it's been a difficult. They haven't had a lot of success, and that's why if you talk to operators with the big companies in the legal gambling industry, they're big fans of the Ontario market because Ontario offers the
Mm-hmm.
ability, allows these businesses to offer both sports wagering and online gaming.
Mm-hmm. All right, and the last one, quick one. I wanted to ask you, how do you see the people are ready for betting in Canada in terms of, just a thought process? Are people getting okay with betting, or is a lot of, negativity around it?
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that betting's been around for forever and ever. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you and I have probably been in Stanley Cup hockey pools, or we've bet with our friends. So
Mm-hmm.
betting's been around for a long time. I think what's different now is it's a big business. There's a lot more companies involved. These companies spend a lot of money on advertising and marketing, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there are valid concerns around problem gambling, especially among young people. So it's really important for the
Mm-hmm.
industry. It's really important for the industry to educate people about the risk of gambling. No different than alcohol or tobacco or cannabis. That there
Mm-hmm.
is education that needs to be done about gambling responsibly. And like me, I watch a Leafs game on a Saturday night, and I might bet $2 on Austin Matthews to score 2 goals, and that's the thing, is to make betting fun, like no different than you going to watch a movie and paying 10 euros to go watch a movie. Just doing
Mm-hmm.
it and having a budget to do it.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. All right, since we are really tired, Steven, do you want to say where could our followers follow your work and see you?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about the gambling industry, Carol, go to gamingnewscanada.ca. We're on
Uh-huh.
Substack, and you can also watch our
Uh-huh.
podcast, the Gaming News Canada show. It's on our Gaming News Canada YouTube channel, so you can watch all the podcasts there.
Okay, Steve, thank you so much. Do you want to add anything?
No, no, I just want to wish you and your everybody in Ukraine, Carol, the best holiday possible. I know it's really difficult times in your country, but wishing all Ukrainians peace and victory very, very soon. I think that would be the best New Year's present, or one of the best New Year's presents we would see, not just for Ukrainians, but for people around the world.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for talking about Canadian gaming. It's really interesting to hear from you. And yeah.
My pleasure, Carol. You have a great Christmas, okay?
Mm-hmm.